Hey, dreamers. Welcome back to the Dear Dreamer podcast. Now, I am recording this from my notes, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But for those of you who are new here, which might be all of you because this is a relaunch of sorts, my name is Candace Kamille, and I am your host. I'm doing something a little brave, a little scary, a little bold today. And I am recording this without any retakes. And that is a little terrifying for me. I'm just going to be honest. This is a space where I want to be authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. And so in my vulnerability and transparency, this doesn't always feel good to me. But it is perfect for what I want to talk about today. Imperfection, right? So why are we leaning into this conversation? Well, on the Faithful Dreamer devotional this morning, we talked about perfectionism not being excellence, right? And because perfectionism is not excellence, I challenged myself to move out of my own spaces of perfectionism. Okay, so I am not perfect. However, I do have perfectionist traits that do show up for me from time to time. And so I wrote the blog. I wrote the devotional. And even after writing the devotional, it always makes me go back and read. So I do the devotional real time when it drops. They're all scheduled ahead of time. And so when they drop, I do the devotional with everyone else. And God is always speaking to me through the devotional as if I had never seen it before. I wrote it. But it always hits like I had never seen it before. So when everybody else is saying ouch, I say ouch too. It's on my toes as well. But when I was reading this morning, I came across the God didn't call you to be perfect line that I wrote. And it says, God didn't call you to be perfect. God called you to be obedient. And yes, that is true. God did not call me to be perfect, but God did call me to be obedient. God did not call you to be perfect. God did call you to be obedient. But then my brain was like, well, but there's the verse that says, be perfect as I am perfect. And so I was reflecting on that. And that comes from 2 Corinthians 12:9, where it says, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness, right? And I was like, well, but there's another verse that says, be perfect as I am perfect. And so when that verse comes up, then what does that mean for me? Right? And so I was curious and did my own research into how that shows up for me and what does that mean to me and what does that mean for me and for you. Because I don't want there to be any space in which we go back and try to use the scripture to defend our perfectionism, right? And so when I was reviewing that this morning, I wanted to get clear. I like clarity. And so that verse comes from Matthew 5:48. It says, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. And when I first looked at it, I was like, so what is this? What does that mean? Right? But, I like a little research. I like to do a little research. And so the Greek word used for perfect is, I'm going to probably mess this word up, but I'm doing this real time. And so bear with the word, but it's teleos, teleos, which means complete, mature, or whole. It doesn't mean flawless. And so when we're looking at that verse, be perfect as I am perfect, does not mean that we are perfect patties out here. Okay? Perfect patty has got to go. We are not perfectionist in this sense, but we get to be whole. We get to be complete. We get to be mature. And so that is what God is calling us to when he says, be perfect as I am perfect. And I know for me, knowing that is freeing. And I know that God didn't call us to be perfect, right? And you know that God didn't call us to be perfect. But I wanted to make sure that when we are reading, when I am reading, that I am getting a true sense of what the word is saying for me, right? And so I had to go back and check my own words, but it said, but it said, and so that is not that's not permission for us to live in perfectionism. So, I say ouch to that. I say ouch to that because it's a little painful. There are things that I know that I overanalyze and overthink through, and sometimes I delay or drag my feet on because I'm trying to make sure I have all the T's dotted or crossed and all the I's dotted. I want, even in recording this, without challenging myself to do it this way, I would have probably gone back 5 times and re-recorded in real life, because there's some things that I'm like, oh, I messed up my wording, or I paused too long, or I couldn't remember what to say, or all of those things, or I feel like I'm rambling. And it's not rambling. I'm just getting my thoughts out, right? So we get to sit perfectionism to the side. If we're honest, that gets in the way for a lot of us. We overthink things as humans a lot, right? Should I do this, or should I do that? Should it look this way, or should it look that way? Should I say this, or should I say that? That's me sometimes. That's me. And part of the reason I feel like this is important to do in this way, and I might not do it like this every time, but today is because I speak to people on the regular basis who are in their own way because they're in their minds, right? And that's me a lot of times. And I think that sometimes there is a facade that the world gives, that we have to have this perfect image, right? That it has to look a specific way, that it's got to be neat, it's got to be clean, it's got to be dressed up, it's got to be a specific way. You have to come to God in this way, right? And all these types of ideals that the world gives that God didn't give us, right? And so I want to show up in a way that allows people to be free from perfectionism. I want to show up in a way that allows me to be free from perfectionism, right? And so I recently changed the blog name and the podcast name. And some people don't even know what happened. So I changed the podcast name to The Dream Leader's Purpose. And God had been talking to me over the last few weeks about changing it back to the Dear Dreamer podcast. And he's like, you tried to change the way you show up in this way, right? You tried to change the messaging. I was trying to refine it, but you tried to lean too far into an area that I didn't tell you to lean too far. I didn't tell you to show up like that. I just wanted to refine what you already had going on. The things that I'm showing you aren't to tell you that you're not going in the right direction, but they're to refine the direction that you're going in, to make even more clear what the message is that I'm giving you. And so he said, change it back. And I didn't tell you to change it back. And it never, the name, the Dream Leader's Purpose never felt fully aligned. In fact, if I'm 1000% honest. When saying the name, I would mess it up every time. Every single time I messed it up because it wasn't me. It wasn't aligned with the message that God is giving me. It wasn't authentic to who God has called and created me to be, right? And so we're back at the name. We're back at Dear Dreamer, because that's who I am. I am the dreamer. And that's who I get to talk to. I get to talk to the dreamer, right? The message that God has given me is for the dreamer who builds, the dreamer who creates, the dreamer who leads, the dreamer who is showing up to do the thing that God has put on their heart to do. And the dreamer who knows that God is calling them to do something, but they don't know where to start, or they're having a hard time getting out of their own way to do what it is that God has called them to do. That's who I get to talk to. That's who I get to talk to. I get to talk to them. I get to talk to their teams. I get to talk to their organizations. I get to talk to that person, because that's who God has called me to. Mm-hmm. So I am grateful for that revelation. I resisted it for a while because I thought that season was over. But God has made it very clear to me that He called me to speak to the dreamer. He called me to coach the dreamer. He called me to write to the dreamer. So the dreamer, Dear Dreamer, is still and will be very heavily, predicated around surrounded around the leader and the purpose of the leader, and the builder and the purpose of the builder, and the creator and the purpose of the creator. So the message is still the same, but the name had to change because it frees me to be authentic and write in the way that I know I get to write. So it gets real when you know that the perfectionism is showing up in all sorts of different ways, right? And for me, it was showing up in how I approach even the recording of the podcast. I had not recorded any podcast because of the idea of knowing how long it takes to record it, with all the retakes and the editing and da-da-da-da-da. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And so the idea of doing it without the retakes, that made me pause for a second because I was like, this is scary. But that's it. That's the one and the two. That is what it is that I get to do. And so the fear shows up when we get to do things that make us feel uncomfortable. The questions that we get to deal with that come up in that space. What if I don't sound polished? What if I stumble over my words? And I probably have stumbled over more words than a few in this time that I've been recording. What if it's not good enough, right? What if people don't resonate? Like, all those questions come up for other people just like they come up for me, right? But God is showing me that my power isn't in the polishing look, right? It's in the purpose. And so He is doing the polishing. I don't have to polish things. He is doing the refining. I don't have to refine myself, right? He is moving things around. He is doing the work in me. And so it's in my willingness to show up, imperfections and all, that I get free and that you get free, because we don't have to put ourselves in these boxes that make us feel like we have to have everything look, feel a specific way. We don't have to feel ready before we show up. to do what God is calling you to do. And so if that is what you get from this rant and rave today, then congratulations. You're just stepping into your new level of uncomfortability, but you're also stepping into your new level of faith, which is exciting. And so I'm excited about this shift in perspective. I was talking to one of my dream partners yesterday, and it really encouraged my heart. It really blessed me. It was a reminder of how God's grace is filling my gaps. And so for each of my dream partners, I create these portals for them with all their resources and their tools. And I'm very intentional about how I do that because I know what is needed for them. Like, I'm paying attention to their words, revisiting the things that they're saying so that I can be intentional about what I put in their homework for the week or what I put in their portals for the week. How I design things for them. I design it with them in mind and with the way that they think in mind. And so I felt like maybe I'm doing too much, right? Maybe this is not what they need. And I sent my client or my dream partner this portal a while ago, and I have been updating it frequently and sending them emails, but I didn't realize that they didn't know that they hadn't been checking the emails. They didn't know what was in their portal. And so it taught me something different about, my clients and my or dream partners and how they view their things. But also it helped me to know that they need to be walked through it, to know that it's there. But when I opened it up for her on the screen, she was like, this is exactly what I need. This is crazy. This is exactly what I need. The intentionality behind it, the walkthrough in it. This is exactly what I need. This speaks to my brain and the way that my brain works. I feel like you see me, you hear me, you get me just by seeing this. And that did something for me. Because I know that when I'm creating for my dream partners, that I'm creating based off of what I hear God saying for me to do, right? I know that He's giving me specific things. Add this. Don't they need this? Do this like this. Say this like this. I know that He's giving me those things, and so when she said that, I was like, okay, no, thank you, Holy Spirit. Because even if I didn't know how to do this for her or how to reach her in this way, you did. And you gave me everything I need to show up for the people that I get to serve well. And in a way that's not just surface, but in a way that really helps them to transform and become the person that you have called and created them to be, to move in the purpose that you've called them to. And so even if I feel like I've missed something, God is still moving, right? And so if you've been feeling stuck or been waiting for things to be perfect, this is your permission to move anyway. This is your permission slip. I am handing it to you. It says move anyway. Dear dreamer, move regardless. Take the step. Do the thing. Release the word. Flaws and all. Right? Just do what He's called you to do. And so if I could challenge you to do anything today, my God, it would be to do one imperfect thing. Today. Do it today. Do something without refining it so that it looks perfect. Write the first sentence for your blog or for whatever it is that you get to write without editing it. Post the content without overthinking it. Record the audio without the retakes like I'm doing right now. Whatever it is, just do it. Do it. And it doesn't mean that later there's something that you get to add, but or tweak, but it does mean don't let that thing stop you from jumping in. Don't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. And if you need a reminder, let me say this over you. God is not waiting for your perfection. He is waiting for you to move in obedience. And when you move, he'll move just like that. When you move, he'll move just like that. And so, if this is hitting for you in any kind of way, if this is touching you in a place that feels deep and real and authentic to you, I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know that I'm not out here by myself. But even if I am, I know that this is freeing for me. So send me a message. Share your imperfect action with me. Speak to me in the comments. I'll talk back. And let's celebrate the progress we get to make over our perfection. And so, until next time, my dear dreamer, keep dreaming, keep moving, and remember, God's grace is sufficient, and it's covering you so you can go out and do the bold, brave thing. Go forth and conquer. I'll see you next time.